Bible in a Year Live, Chronological Project, Week 23, Day 1, Good News Translation. Queen Athaliah of Judah. As soon as King Ahaziah's mother, Athaliah, learned of her son's murder, she gave orders for all the members of the royal family to be killed. Only Ahaziah's son, Joash, escaped. He was about to be killed with the others, but was rescued by his aunt, Jehosheba, who was King Jehoram's daughter and Ahaziah's half-sister. She took him and his nurse into a bedroom in the temple and hid from Athaliah, so that he was not killed. For 6 years, Jehosheba took care of the boy and kept him hidden in the temple, while Athaliah ruled as queen. Queen Athaliah of Judah. As soon as King Ahaziah's mother, Athaliah, learned of her son's murder, she gave orders for all the members of the royal family of Judah to be killed. Ahaziah had a half-sister, Jehosheba. She was married to a priest named Jehoiada. She secretly rescued one of Ahaziah's sons, Joash, took him away from the other princes who were about to be murdered, and hid him and a nurse in a bedroom at the temple. By keeping him hidden, she saved him from death at the hands of Athaliah. For 6 years he remained there in hiding, while Athaliah ruled as queen. But in the 7th year, Jehoiada, the priest, sent for the officers in charge of the royal bodyguard and of the palace guards and told them to come to the temple, where he had made them agree under oath to what he planned to do. He showed them King Ahaziah's son Joash and gave them the following orders. When you come on duty on the Sabbath, 1/3 of you are to guard the palace, another third are to stand guard at the Sur gate, and the other third are to stand guard at the gate behind the other guards. The 2 groups that are off guard on the Sabbath are to stand guard at the temple to protect the king. You are to guard King Joash with drawn swords and stay with him wherever he goes. Anyone who comes near you is to be killed. The officers obeyed Jehoiada's instructions and brought their men to him, those going off duty on the Sabbath and those going on duty. He gave the officers the spears and shields that had belonged to King David and had been kept in the temple, and he stationed the men with drawn swords all around the front of the temple to protect the king. Then Jehoiada led Joash out, placed the crown on his head, and gave him a copy of the laws governing kingship. Then Joash was anointed and proclaimed king. The people clapped their hands and shouted, "Long live the king!" The revolt against Athaliah. After waiting 6 years, Jehoiada the priest decided that it was time to take action. He made a pact with 5 army officers, Azariah son of Jehoram, Ishmael son of Johanna, Azariah son of Obed, Maaseiah son of Adiah, and Elishaphat son of Zichri. They traveled to all the cities of Judah and brought back with them to Jerusalem the Levites and all the heads of the clans. They all gathered in the temple, and there they made a covenant with Joash, the king's son. Jehoiada said to them, "Here is the son of the late king. He is now to be king, as the Lord promised that King David's descendants would be. This is what we will do. When the priests and the Levites come on duty on the Sabbath, 1/3 of them will guard the temple gates, another third will guard the royal palace, and the rest will be stationed at the fountain gates. All the people will assemble in the temple courtyard. No one is to enter the temple buildings except the priests and the Levites who are on duty. They may enter because they are consecrated, but the rest of the people must obey the Lord's instructions and stay outside. The Levites are to stand guard around the king with their swords drawn, and are to stay with the king wherever he goes. Anyone who tries to enter the temple is to be killed." The Levites and the people of Judah carried out Jehoiada's instructions. The men were not dismissed when they went off duty on the Sabbath. So the commanders had available both those coming on duty and those going off. Jehoiada gave the officers the spears and shields that had belonged to King David and had been kept in the temple. He stationed the men with drawn swords all around the front of the temple to protect the king. Then Jehoiada led Joash out, placed the crown on his head, and gave him a copy of the laws governing kingship. And so he was made king. Jehoiada the priest and his sons anointed Joash, and everyone shouted, "Long live the king." Queen Athaliah heard the noise being made by the guards and the people, so she hurried to the temple where the crowd had gathered. There she saw the new king standing by the column at the entrance of the temple, as was the custom. He was surrounded by the officers and the trumpeters, and the people were all shouting joyfully and blowing trumpets. Athaliah tore her clothes in distress and shouted, "Treason! Treason!" Jehoiada did not want Athaliah killed in the temple area, so he ordered the army officers, "Take her out between the rows of guards and kill anyone who tries to rescue her." They seized her, took her to the palace, and there, at the horse gate, they killed her. Athaliah heard the people cheering for the king, so she hurried to the temple where the crowd had gathered. There she saw the new king at the temple entrance, standing by the column reserved for kings and surrounded by the army officers and the trumpeters. All the people were shouting joyfully and blowing trumpets, and the temple musicians with their instruments were leading the celebration. She tore her clothes in distress and shouted, "Treason! Treason!" Jehoiada did not want Athaliah killed in the temple area, so he called out the army officers and said, "Take her out between the rows of guards and kill anyone who tries to rescue her." They seized her, took her to the palace, and there at the horse gate they killed her. Jehoiada's reform. The priest Jehoiada had King Joash and the people make a covenant with the Lord that they would be the Lord's people, and he also made a covenant between the king and the people. Then the people went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They smashed the altars and the idols and killed Matan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. Jehoiada put guards on duty at the temple, and then he, the officers, the royal bodyguards, and the palace guards escorted the king from the temple to the palace, followed by all the people. Joash entered by the guard gate and took his place on the throne. All the people were filled with happiness, and the city was quiet, now that Athaliah had been killed in the palace. Joash became king of Judah at the age of 7. Jehoiada's reform. The priest Jehoiada had King Joash and the people join him in making a covenant that they would be the Lord's people. Then they all went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They smashed the altars and idols there and killed Matan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. Jehoiada put the priests and Levites in charge of the work of the temple. They were to carry out the duties assigned to them by King David and to burn the sacrifices offered to the Lord in accordance with the law of Moses. They were also in charge of the music and the celebrations. Jehoiada also put guards on duty at the temple gates to keep out anyone who was ritually unclean. The army officers, the leading citizens, the officials, and all the rest of the people joined Jehoiada in a procession that brought the king from the temple to the palace. They entered by the main gate, and the king took his place on the throne. All the people were filled with happiness, and the city was quiet now that Athaliah had been killed. King Joash of Judah. In the 7th year of the reign of King Jehu of Israel, Joash became king of Judah, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 40 years. His mother was Biayl from the city of Beersheba. Throughout his life he did what pleased the Lord, because Jehoiada the priest instructed him. However, the pagan places of worship were not destroyed, and the people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. Joash called the priests and ordered them to save up the money paid in connection with the sacrifices in the temple, both the dues paid for the regular sacrifices and the money given as free will gifts. Each priest was to be responsible for the money brought by those he served, and the money was to be used to repair the temple as needed. But by the 23rd year of Joash's reign, the priests still had not made any repairs in the temple. So he called in Jehoiada and the other priests and asked them, "Why aren't you repairing the temple? From now on, you are not to keep the money you receive. You must hand it over so that the repairs can be made." The priests agreed to this and also agreed not to make the repairs in the temple. Then Jehoiada took a box, made a hole in the lid, and placed the box on the altar, on the right side as one enters the temple. The priest on duty at the entrance put in the box all the money given by the worshippers. Whenever there was a large amount of money in the box, the royal secretary and the high priest would come melt down the silver, and weigh it. After recording the exact amount, they would hand the silver over to the men in charge of the work in the temple, and these would pay the carpenters, the builders, the masons, and the stone cutters, buy the timber and the stones used in the repairs, and pay all other necessary expenses. None of the money, however, was used to pay for making silver cups, bowls, trumpets, or tools for tending the lamps, or any other article of silver or of gold. It was all used to pay the workers and to buy the materials used in the repairs. The men in charge of the work were thoroughly honest, so there was no need to require them to account for the funds. The money given for the repayment offerings and for the offerings for sin was not deposited in the box. It belonged to the priests. King Joash of Judah. Joash became king of Judah at the age of 7, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 40 years. His mother was Biayl from the city of Beersheba. He did what was pleasing to the Lord as long as Jehoiada the priest was alive. Jehoiada chose 2 wives for King Joash, and they bore him sons and daughters. After he had been king for a while, Joash decided to have the temple repaired. He ordered the priests and the Levites to go to the cities of Judah and collect from all the people enough money to make the annual repairs on the temple. He told them to act promptly, but the Levites delayed. So he called in Jehoiada, their leader, and demanded, "Why haven't you seen to it that the Levites collect from Judah and Jerusalem the tax which Moses, the servant of the Lord, required the people to pay for support of the tent of the Lord's presence?" The followers of Athaliah, that corrupt woman, had damaged the temple and had used many of the sacred objects in worship of Baal. The king ordered the Levites to make a box for contributions and to place it at the temple gate. They sent word throughout Jerusalem and Judah for everyone to bring to the Lord the tax which Moses, God's servant, had first collected in the wilderness. This pleased the people and their leaders, and they brought their tax money and filled the box with it. Every day the Levites would take the box to the royal official who was in charge of it. Whenever it was full, the royal secretary and the high priest's representative would take the money out and return the box to its place, and so they collected a large sum of money. The king and Jehoiada would give the money to those who were in charge of repairing the temple, and they hired stonemasons, carpenters, and metal workers to make the repairs. All of them worked hard, and they restored the temple to its original condition, as solid as ever. When the repairs were finished, the remaining gold and silver were given to the king and Jehoiada, who used it to make bowls and other utensils made for the temple. Jehoiada's policies are reversed. As long as Jehoiada was alive, sacrifices were offered regularly at the temple. After reaching a very old age of 130, he died. They buried him in the royal tombs in David's city in recognition of the service he had done for the people of Israel, for God, and for the temple. But once Jehoiada was dead, the leaders of Judah persuaded King Joash to listen to them instead. And so the people stopped worshipping in the temple of the Lord, the God of their ancestors, and began to worship idols and the images of the goddess Asherah. Their guilt for these sins brought the Lord's anger on Judah and Jerusalem. The Lord sent prophets to warn them to return to him, but the people refused to listen. Then the Spirit of God took control of Zechariah, son of Jehoiada the priest. He stood where the people could see him and called out, "The Lord God asks why you have disobeyed his commands and are bringing disaster on yourselves. You abandoned him, so he has abandoned you." King Joash joined in a conspiracy against Zechariah, and on the king's orders, the people stoned Zechariah in the temple courtyard. The king forgot about the loyal service that Zechariah's father, Jehoiada, had given him, and he had Zechariah killed. As Zechariah was dying, he called out, "May the Lord see what you are doing and punish you." The death of Jehu. At that time, the Lord began to reduce the size of Israel's territory. King Hazael of Syria conquered all the Israelite territory east of the Jordan as far south as the town of Aroer on the Arnon River. This included the territories of Gilead and Bashan, where the tribes of Gad, Reuben, and East Manasseh lived. Everything else that Jehu did, including his brave deeds, is recorded in the history of the kings of Israel. He died and was buried in Samaria, and his son Jehoahaz succeeded him as king. Jehu had ruled in Samaria as king of Israel for 28 years.